Hi everyone, and today I have a special guest with me, Kuang Wen, whom I met at the AI SG meetup recently. So he basically did an autograder using ChatGPT, and I was very interested in how he used AI for education. So currently he's a chemistry teacher, and I'll let him share more about his background with you. So Kuang Wen, please.
Yeah. Thanks, John, for having me here. Really glad to talk about AI and education related things today. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently teaching at the JC level, and I teach chemistry, but sometimes people do mistake me as someone who teaches computer science. Not sure why. Maybe it's all the things that I've been programming. So
You
I've
know why? Because your LinkedIn profile is all the tech stuff.
oh,
That's
maybe
why.
that's why. Yeah. So I've been programming since 2018. Started only because I wanted to create Autograder. So it has been a few years. Finally, the missing piece really was what came out, at the end of last year that really got the pieces falling together.
Nice. So this is really cool because embracing the tech, the latest tech, in order to use it for like educational purpose is something that I'm very interested in as well. So I think right now, we will both share some of our own projects that we did. I think Kwang Won has very interesting projects, three very interesting projects. So maybe let's just dive right into them. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thanks. So I'm going to show three projects here, and I'm going to start off with the simplest things that we have actually deployed to all the way to things that we are still trying to explore. So the first one that I wanted to share, just let me share my screen in a bit. Okay, so the first one I wanted to share is this Copilot, this H2 Organic Copilot. So this is something that we have actually deployed, and I've tried it with some of my students, right? So basically what you can do is I will just ask it a simple organic chemistry question, such as why are alkanes unreactive? Hopefully the audience understand what alkanes are. Yeah, it might have been some time. All right, so what it will actually give you, this is just a very typical just your cosine similarity, trying to match the top K similarity items. But of course, nowadays people call that the retrieval part of RAG. So this is something that this is just something that I've just thrown into it, which is the retrieval augmented generation part. But what I'm more interested in are the parts at the bottom. So over here, it will basically tell me which page of the lecture notes I should find these items. It will give me a short summary of what that paragraph is about. Not even a summary, it was a short snippet of it. So, and students can actually look at the score to decide, is this actually worth opening and flipping to that page? So this is an assistant that helps students to study faster and more effectively. And it's not really there to give it the answer. So that's why the generation part is not something that I'm very proud of, but I actually want this for my students to be able to access some of this. And for these videos here, what will happen is that when the students click on it, it will go into this particular video, but it's not going to start from the start. It's going to go to a specific timestamp for the students to watch the videos. And because this is the school's IP, so I can't kind of open up and show you. But
no problem.
Essentially, when students click on it, let's say this context starts at 1 minute 30 seconds, then the video will be at 1 minute 30 and you'll start playing. Yeah, so this is how I've tried to use a very simple embedding models, just embed the text and then do a cosine similarity search. But of course, that was very slow, so I have just put it into the vector source like Pinecone. So this is just built on top of Pinecone and some API calls, and this is just a front end that's hosted on GitHub.
Yeah, very nice. Once you embed the things into embeddings and store on Pinecone, essentially it's free. You don't have to do the embedding cost anymore. The embedding is actually quite fast. It's just that you can't embed all the pages at the same time. So I understand this is quite a fast method. After you do everything into vectors, you just do cosine similarity. It's a super fast process. Less than 1 second, you can match everything. I'm just curious, why do you call this Copilot?
Because it's supposed to be an assistant with the student. As I am studying, this thing is sitting beside me and going through, this together. Of course, the other word that I thought of is assistant, but Copilot sounds like a nicer term at that point in time.
The Copilot makes me think of GitHub Copilot or like those stuff where you code and then the code will auto-generate. So I think yours is more of a virtual you, like basically all your knowledge stored in these embeddings and these documents. And if you want to ask like you a question, you can then give these documents to the user or the student. And basically this kind of replaces like how you would answer the student as well. Like the student has a reference of where to get the information from. So the next follow-up question I have is, because usually people do this for retrieval augmented generation, why not do a kind of generation using ChatGPT to get a summary or get some concise answer?
Oh, good question. This is actually the one on top. Here is what I think. It's actually from I use Palm API because it's free at this point in time.
Okay.
So this is when I say here is what I think. If I ask a terrible question, let's say the things that have been returned have a cosine similarity score of lower than, let's say, 0.6. Here, the answer here will just be I don't know, because the retrieval part gives a score, and using that score, I filter to see whether I found any relevant documents to make sure that it doesn't hallucinate that much.
I see.
But why I don't like to have this is because ultimately in education, what we want is we want our students to be able to make sense of the information given to them to apply it. But sometimes what students will do is they might take the entire tutorial question and just throw it inside here and write out the entire answer by itself. What I want to do is for them to really click into the content and open up and read through and watch, because I don't want to give them just a summarized version. I just want them to have a better search tool instead of flipping through the pages one by one or scrubbing through the video slowly.
I understand. No, I didn't know that the top part was the summary. I thought that was a fixed text. So yeah, so you are essentially doing retrieval augmented generation for the top part to give the answer for the question below, like the why are alkanes unreactive, and then you give a list of sources that it came from, so that the student can look at it in detail.
Yep.
So that's a very cool thing. Can I ask another question for this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I want to try to break it. So yours is all chemistry stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, let's ask something that is not chemistry. I want to see like how it performs. Like maybe you can ask like, who is the best chemistry teacher?
How will you know that I didn't program my own name inside? I might have just tested it. Yeah. So
very good, very good. Yes.
yeah, I don't
So
know.
if the student anyhow types in some stuff, you can, and then you don't get a relevant enough document, you say I don't know. So
Yeah.
that's very nice.
And so actually the one of the main design considerations was to save money, because when I first rolled out the tool before the generation part came out, so I started working on this tool before ChatGPT came out. So when students realized that they could do this, they started to ask funny questions. And so before I connected the ChatGPT to it, there were students that asked, hello, hi, how are you? Just asking random questions to the model, and I don't want every single one of these questions to be answered, because I will go broke in just a matter of days.
I see. So you already preempted that students will ask something like why I'm asking. They will try to break the system. Actually, students are very creative. Yeah.
Yes,
If
give
there's
them a
a way,
tool, then
yeah,
they'll break
if
it.
there's a way to break it, they will find a way to break it. So I think this is something that also is quite pertinent to a lot of companies doing ChatGPT as well. Like, how do we want to make sure that the answer is always correct, or not correct, but always like factual and grounded? Because there's this thing called hallucinations. Sometimes GPT answers in its own terms. So
Yeah.
the way you prompt this must be very, very specific. You must say that you must only answer using the context and nothing else. Don't use your background knowledge. So I can see that your prompt is quite robust, because I asked it a question that has no documents at all, and it didn't hallucinate.
Oh, so this is actually not by ChatGPT. So this I don't know it's not even from large language model. It is actually a hard coded response, such
If
that
the similarity is too low, is it?
if the similarity is too
Nice,
low,
nice.
I will not run the LLM at all. I will just return I don't know.
This is what you're talking about to save costs, right? Because you don't
Yes,
have to
yes.
go through the. ChatGPT if they ask like, hello, how are you? That kind of questions.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So this is something that I like a lot as well. So I also advocate like using large language models with rule-based stuff, because large language models tend to give very flexible answers, and sometimes you may not be able to control its output. But if you know certain rules that you say, okay, if it's not relevant enough, I don't want to output. Then you can hard code this as a rule. Like if the relevance score below a certain threshold, output I don't know, or output some generic answer. Yeah, or generic response. No, I like this a lot. I mean, of course, you can also prompt it in the large language model, but it won't be as accurate and also won't be as robust,
Yeah.
because people can jailbreak the model. And
Mm.
and I think the most important thing is it costs you money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't care whether they jailbreak the model. What can they do? They screenshot and say, this model told me the wrong answer. But so what I am more concerned about is actually number one, the cost. Because the cost will rack up very quickly if they just spam, right? I think another thing that when we designed this, what we realized was that the lecture notes were not as good as the lecture videos that were embedded. And when I looked at the data, this is my hypothesis, is that when teachers teach lecture, we sometimes will ask rhetorical question like why are alkanes unreactive? Or so why do you think alkanes are unreactive? Then we will go on to explain the answer. And that is why the retrieval is quite accurate, because I suppose the question and answers, when they are chunked, they exist in the same part of the same region of the vector space. But when we talk about lecture notes, they might not start with questions. They just start with statements, and they might not be things that you can directly search for. And that is why perhaps just by doing that, it did not go that well. So we are still, this data, the first data point that you saw was a cherry pick data point, because there are cases where it doesn't work. And it would, and even the model might say that it's quite relevant. So it is either the embedding that has some issues, which is something that we're trying to fix. We are thinking about whether it makes sense to fine tune the embedding model that's faster, or we can, another method that I've tried that worked quite well was this method called HYDE, HYDE. I don't remember what it stands for, but
Have hypothetical document embeddings.
yeah,
You ask a few questions to generate hypothetical documents from a query, and then from that document you embed chunks of that hypothetical document, and you try to find like vector chunks that are similar to that imagined document. Yeah.
yeah. So that sort of worked, because when I asked ChatGPT the answer first, it gave me an answer that is not entirely correct, but the idea is close enough. Then it was good enough to find the relevant documents from my Pinecone database. So that actually boosted the accuracy quite a fair bit. And that's actually something that we are going to deploy next year for the new incoming batch of students.
Very nice. You are very advanced actually. This height thing just came out this year. Yeah. So actually, the key thing I can see for the reason why the embeddings don't work so well is everything is about chemistry. So, and the chemistry embeddings over here depends on how you group your chunks. If your chunks are too big, then it could be like if there's like 3 or 4 ideas in the same passage. I don't know how many tokens you use for each chunk, but if let's say each passage has like a few different facts and so on, each of these facts can pull the embedding towards different spaces, and then end up you get an embedding in the center, which is not indicative of any of them. So that could be a reason why. I guess if you talk about like your videos, maybe the way that it's embedded is that when you talk about the video, it's like one idea at one time or something. I'm not sure how the format is, but that could be one reason why. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we are trying to explore really is how we can separate the notes by sections, because each section pretty much talks about one idea. And by splitting into sections, we can actually embed them by sections, and hopefully the cosine similarity or the embeddings will be more accurate.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, so that you don't have too many ideas in the same chunk. Each chunk solely one idea. So like one section is talking about one idea, that will embed better. Another thing you could try is to see whether the vector representations or your chemistry concepts are embedded correctly. Because sometimes for like, especially for bio words, the model doesn't understand it.
That's why we intend to train quite a simple sentence transformer to see whether it's good at embedding. To get using I believe on Hugging Face they use the contrastive learning method to train it. So we are trying to get a set of data set to be able to do it.
It's difficult. Fine-tuning it is difficult with small data.
Try lor. Let's try. Anyway,
maybe you can try another method. So this method is basically to do with filtering. So perhaps you could based on your query, you could identify like where is the likely relevant location, like which topic. Then you retrieve those topics. So maybe one step before the embedding is you try to classify into some topic first.
I think that could be an interesting avenue to try. Thanks.
Do you have a lot more documents that you embed compared to the videos?
I wouldn't say that it's a lot more, but of course the number of words is definitely more in the lecture notes than in the videos. A bit hard to tell. I forgot about the data set already.
No worries. No, I'm just curious why the videos are embedded so well. Yeah. So
I have no idea. It was a random chunk size also. It was exactly the same algorithm to split them, to encode them, embed them, and things like that.
Yeah, maybe try a smaller chunk size for the documents. I don't know whether that would help. Yeah, but either way, I think this is impressive. RAG itself is great for most cases. For like very specialized contexts, like for chemistry maybe, it may not do as well because there's a lot of out of domain terms maybe for ChatGPT. So it depends on how it's trained, how the embedding, the contrastive learning is trained. If they use chemistry data, then sure, your embeddings would represent quite well. If not, you might have to do some hacks like hypothetical document embeddings or filtering before you do retrieval. Those are some stuff that could be done. But yeah, that's cool. All right, you want to show the next one? So this is, by the way, is the order of showing is in terms of impressiveness, right? So this is the basic, and then it gets more and more advanced.
Yeah, it's supposed to be more experimental from what has been done to what is more experimental. So let me share the second one.
Yeah, I'm ready to be impressed. So that was you know what you showed in the first one is already a lot of business use cases. So let's see.
Let's see. Okay, so the second one is what I've realized is that when it comes to setting questions, we have so someone once came up to me and said, you know, AI can be used to create questions, and my response to the person was, why? Because when AI creates a question, I need to vet the question. I want to make sure that it's correct. But when I look at the repository of questions that we have, it's really a lot. Over the years, every year teachers will set questions, and when we put all of these questions together, there's nobody can finish it in their entire lifetime. So why is there even a need for AI to generate questions, right? So what I realized was after I went home and I thought a little more about that, I realized that there could be many use cases for this, not just to generate questions, but generate questions for some other purpose. So for example, if I am a student trying to answer a certain type of question, certain calculation question, and I want to practice this type of question, just this particular type of questions. And as a teacher, I might not be able to tag X number of questions to give you this particular concept. There could be other questions that have a mixture of concepts in them, especially at the JC level. So am I able to give you the same kind of question, just with different contexts? I think this is what a question that I pose to myself. And the other thing is, can I generate enough questions of the same category, of the same tag, so that I can train or build an adaptive learning system for students? Because adaptive learning system, things that follow and track the student's progress, give the student different questions. We don't want the student to memorize the answer. We want to give something that is somewhat different, but still using a similar concept. So the issue with that is the number of similar questions that we have. We have a lot of questions, but how many of them are similar? Even if they're similar, do we have a repository of those questions that are tagged? I think those are the questions that I try to answer. That's why I came up with this. And we all know that there has been this saying about ChatGPT not being able to solve PSLE questions. And I do realize that to me that's not the key point that I was interested in. What I'm interested in is, if you cannot solve PSLE questions, I don't really care. But what I want to see is whether or not they can, by giving it a question and a model answer, can ChatGPT generate an answer that's correct, a new question that's correct with the same method. So one thing I realized is that if it cannot do math well, it's very hard to get it to do calculation questions. But what if I ask ChatGPT to do something that it's good at? I ask it to write code. So by asking ChatGPT to write code, it is able to write the solution. And because I have ChatGPT Plus, so I ask it to immediately go and run the code and give the output, make sure that it's correct. If it is correct, then I will save the model, sort of like memory. You just store that as a memory, and next time around, when I want this particular type of question, you can generate a lot of them. And ChatGPT just creates a new rephrased question itself. But the way to answer a question is still code. And this is how I actually got it to do. So lots and lots of stuff, but this time, what I got it to do was this paragraph. I asked it to run the code, write the code, run the code, and if it is correct, generate a new question. But what was very interesting was that I actually gave it the wrong answer. And it was
Did
even
you manually output the wrong answer, or the answer that generated above was wrong?
the answer that the original model answer that I pasted inside was wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was even able to tell me that the correct answer was 44.68% and not 35.4. Yeah, so it was very interesting because after that I thought, oh, ChatGPT has failed. And I went to press my calculator and I realized that the question that I referenced had a wrong answer and ChatGPT was actually right.
So AI is now smarter than you.
Smarter than the person who created the question. Yeah. I just took it to try. So it was very interesting because if I show you the code, they actually wrote down these values here. This working, I could easily check it because this is really the working that my students would have done, right? And this is actually the output that it gave. So what I realized in other experiments that I don't know where I left them, right? Because I might have cleared the data. What was interesting was when I asked it to generate 5 other questions, it actually gave me a working where these values are all random. So they will write math import random. And it is not just a random value, they actually know what kind of values I want to scope within. So they know that the mass of this is probably not going to go to negative. It's probably not going to go to 1000 because I want to keep it within this range. And they were able to pick it up and write that as a code. So they even have proper boundaries to bound all of these values here to something that is realistic. And I thought that was very
But
impressive.
technically, this is not that important, right? Even if it's not realistic, as long as you can compute it, it's fine also, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't want a negative mass.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so I think what we want is, because at the end of the day, if let's say the question comes out and the student can answer, we still want it to be correct. Because beyond allowing students to use it for adaptive learning systems, setting very similar questions, maybe some people might want to use this to set questions where they will just produce some form of context for it. But of course, the teacher can look at it and say, this negative number looks weird, let me change it. But if this is automated, then I want the numbers to be bounded. It was still very impressive to me that ChatGPT managed to spot it.
Yeah, actually, I think there's a few things done right here. The first thing is like you gave it a template to generate the question from, so you ground it in some form of ideal question format you want it to do. Second, you didn't ask ChatGPT to just generate the answer without code, because ChatGPT's math is not that great. Like pattern matching the math is not good. But code-wise, it can match code quite well, especially GPT-4. ChatGPT is not that great, but GPT-4 can. I think if you try this with ChatGPT, it might fail sometimes. Yeah. So GPT-4 is quite good with code. You use the code to basically do your calculations and then basically get the answer. Do you actually convert this code back to like language text for the answer?
Here I don't think I have it, but I think I did. Mm,
No worries.
No,
So
not
the
not in this one. Yeah, but
I
in
like this.
another in another experiment, I actually after that I said, this is correct. Please write it as a question. Then it wrote it out.
I like this because you are actually doing the domain shift for the right stuff. So it's like math, it's not very good in text. So use code for math because code is more consistent, more reliable, and you can pattern match from the initial language to your code. That's also what I did for the art challenge that I was sharing at the AISG meetup. Like
Yeah.
the initial input grid, then you map into like a certain abstraction like objects or pixels. Then from there you find the differences, and then you map into some form of language to tell you like what's the rule from input to output. Then you use that rule and write code for it.
Mm.
Because I do realize that if you try to use like a rule and then ask ChatGPT to say consistently apply this rule, okay, the only thing that's consistent is that it will consistently hallucinate. Okay,
Yes.
I mean most of the time it won't, but there's an off chance that it will. So
Mm.
consistency is best done through code, and I
Yeah.
think this is very cool. The marking schema though, we ask it to generate a mark scheme, but there's no template. How will it know how to mark?
Yeah. So that it's just when I talk about model answer, it's just the steps that I've actually given all the way at the start. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So there's no like how many marks located, right? It's just like what are the things to look out for your answer.
Mm. Because for now, this is what I'm interested in. Of course, to give it marks, not too difficult. I just have to tag it. So for example, this is 1 mark, this is 1 mark, and then final answer
Mm,
1 mark, and then I ask it to help generate for me.
nice. I have one like something is bugging me with this is that the questions that they generate, do they use the same chemical compounds or they
Mm,
hallucinate their own ones or like create their own ones?
so if you look at this, there's a reason why I chose this because it gave a very weird chemical after that. After I asked it to generate something, it gave me this thing. So it started to generate something. Might be right, might not be right, but at that point in time, to me, uh, this was a problem. So in the other experiment that I've done, what I've done is I have given it exactly the same, which is calcium carbonate. So I have variants of how calcium carbonate is used in the statements. So it is still calcium carbonate. I asked it to keep it to the same chemical, but I rephrase the question. I reorder some of the statements. So that the variability is not in the chemicals, but the variability is in the values. The variability is in the phrasing of the question.
Understand. I just want to highlight there's a danger of ChatGPT to generate questions because you may not be sure that the chemical compounds generated are correct.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, but if you say that, okay, I just want to create a program to help me randomize the structure of the question, I think that it can do,
Mm,
right? What I'm not sure because in order for it to know chemistry, it needs to like be able to tell what are the valid chemical equations, what are the not valid ones. I'm not too sure how it's trained, but you know, knowing LLMs, even if you give it the whole set of rules that are valid, there's bound to be a case where that it can output something that is not valid.
yeah,
Yeah,
it, it was it was horrible. I've tried.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you will never know that it's not valid because it all looks so plausible.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why one way that we have thought of is because I've actually tried certain things and the equations are non-valid, but to any students it might look valid actually. So one of the ways that we are looking at is we are just going to give it a library of standard equations that we usually use because in the syllabus, I mean for practice questions, your equations will not vary that much. It's always the same few things. So we just have a small library. It's not difficult. In 1 hour, couple of people can just get a lot of it done and use that as context to
Mm.
to
I,
ground
I, I,
the generation.
I like that. So force it to generate only that equation. What I'd
Mm,
like to suggest is even something more, even more drastic, because experiments have been done saying that if your context is too long, it encourages like bad answers or backgrounding to the context. I also noticed that in my experiments as well. If you ground it in like three equations, it maybe can do it quite well. If you ground it in 20 equations, sometimes it doesn't really
mm,
follow it that well. And sometimes it makes and matches also some of the context. So
mm,
maybe what you can do is a rule-based process to like randomly select one equation and just say ground it exactly in this equation
mm.
to generate variants of the question. Then you must use this equation. You can
Yeah,
use the stuff like that. Yeah. So the fewer the context, the better the generation in general. So there might be a few steps behind passing through GPT or passing through an LLM. There might be some steps that you might want to just do some rule-based things to just say you only use certain equations and so on. Yeah. So I think that is a more reliable generation, if you ask me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so just like the first example, it has to be rule-based at some point in time. It has to be a hybrid approach. If not, just trusting LLMs itself is something that I've learned too well not to do.
Yeah, I always advocate for rule-based plus LLMs because I also did lots of experiments at LLMs and I see its weaknesses as well. But it's very impressive how it can flexibly mix and match inputs. It's very useful when you want creative stuff, like if you want to imagine a new question, sure, you can use it to imagine. But the thing is, like, you need to check it. After it imagines, you need to check whether it's valid because it doesn't have a very good checking mechanism. It just doesn't know these chemistry equations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, there was once I was asking a group of people that, with some tools with ChatGPT writing out all the content, some tools will also tag it and say that this is from this source, this is from that source. And I was asking the group of people that I was talking to whether or not they, given a research paper with the citations, do they go and open up research paper citations to read what is going on behind? And in the same thought, would people actually click on those links and go and see where the sources are for LLM generated content, even though it is cited?
Do you know, for like example, if I use BART, right, the citation sometimes is all hallucinated.
Yeah.
But Bing, because they do some form of retrieval augmented generation, your sources are generally correct because they ground the context using those sources. So if you let LMs do the generation of sources without giving the context of those sources, or without giving those sources as context, I think it's quite certain that the sources will be all hallucinated, or most of them will be hallucinated. So yeah. So what did the students think? You asked them.
So the of course the people that I was talking to were all adults, and they said, "Oh yeah, good point. We usually don't read research papers if they are cited." Yeah, so I guess that's from someone who has been in the research field for some time. I think this is something that people do face, right? When they have research papers, they see a citation, it actually makes them trust it more than want to go and verify it.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, I myself also don't really read through the citations unless the idea that they cite is interesting. Then I will go into it. Because now there's a problem with knowledge. There's too much knowledge. There's not enough time to read. I mean, people offer free YouTube courses, free this and that. You just don't have time to do it. You have to be very selective. So sometimes you just like, oh, okay, this is cited. There's like, okay, it should be correct. So I can understand why this is done. But I would like to also say that I think in the future, a lot of our knowledge that we ingest, we probably won't know the source anymore. Okay, because it will all be like AI generated stuff. So it's getting harder and harder to tell the truth. And so like one thing I like to tell people is like, if you think what GPT is telling you is always correct, that means you probably don't know enough. Okay, because like if you ask GPT to generate on something that you are very, very familiar with, it's bound to be something that generated that you don't agree with. Yeah. So if you're an expert of the field, GPT is probably like average human level. So you will tell something's wrong. But if you are below, like you're not very knowledgeable that area, everything will sound correct to you. So how do we gut that for like education? So this is not really your product right now, but more like if people use AI to like help them summarize stuff, help them tell facts, how do they know whether that's correct or not? So that I think that's a huge problem because I can see increasingly we will use AI to digest large amounts of information, but do we really know that what we are seeing is correct? Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
I think there is certainly an issue that's going to happen or is happening. And of course, plagiarism is another thing, right? In the past, people just left and the entire passage off. It's easy to just turn it in and catch them. Now, even AI detectors, we are not so sure whether they are false positives or not. It could be a case where the student is selecting, it is really taking a source from somewhere and rewriting in their own words, but the source could be AI generated. And so, it is a cycle where after a while, everything just becomes non-human generated, right? Unless you have a lot of errors in them. So it's definitely one issue that we are trying to deal with. But at the end of the day, the fundamental question that we always ask ourselves is, what's the point of doing this exercise? And when we give such assignments to our students, we really want them to think, how are you using ChatGPT or other large language models? Are you using it so that you can submit your work tomorrow and you don't get into trouble? Or are you using it because you are trying to use it to augment the way that you are tackling things? So that's why, even for the Copilot that I shared earlier on, it doesn't give them the answer. It tells them where to find the answer, but they still have to find it. So this is just one step that we are trying to take so that students, they practice this in their daily lives, and hopefully they know that, there are certain things that that large language models cannot do, and I need to be aware of them and think about them carefully while I'm trying to achieve my goal of any task. We are not stopping them, but we are at the same time telling them that, as you are doing your work, please know what you can and cannot use large language models for.
Yeah, I think it's very important to know which sources are correct and which sources are not. Like factual sources, like textbooks. Okay, I mean textbooks may not be always right, but at least high chance is right. So like looking at the source in order to verify your information might be something that we need to do more and more. Although I say there's a lot of sources, but if you want to be very sure you're correct, like you want to learn new knowledge and stuff, you might still need to look at where your source comes from rather than just taking the LLMs output wholesale. So I think this idea is very important to instill into learners, because otherwise they might just think everything that GPT or LLM comes out is the truth, and that's very dangerous. It's like asking people to say that, oh, whatever you read on any web page is correct. That's not gonna same kind of education but different tools. We shouldn't stop the tools, but we should educate people that you shouldn't trust it completely.
I mean, thinking back on the days without ChatGPT, people still copy from Wikipedia. So same idea, right?
All right, maybe is this more or less for the second one? Because I do know you have your most impressive idea you haven't shared yet, the most experimental idea.
Yes,
but also I think the most impressive, right?
Okay, just hang on. I will need to share two screens. Need to find where those two screens are. Okay, are you able to see these two sets?
Yeah, the teacher console and the login.
So this is something something similar to Mentimeter, if you have tried that before. So basically, the teacher can start a session in class. And one of the issues that I faced is in the classroom, if I'm given MCQ answers, it's very easy to analyze them. So I have a class of, let's say, 28. I give out MCQ answers, 50% answer A, the rest have a mix of B, C, and D. I know that, okay, maybe most of them answer it correctly, or maybe A is the wrong answer, but it's a trap. And I can say, okay, most of you fell into this trap. It's very easy to analyze. But MCQ don't hold as rich information as short answers that people can give. So what this tool does is using our typical clustering algorithms. Now I use k-means. Earlier on, it was k nearest neighbors. So it's still the same, similar ideas to find how to cluster these different groups of answers into a few buckets. Right now, it's still arbitrary. There are other techniques that we are trying to explore to make sure that they can cluster better. So by clustering, instead of reading 28 answers, now I only probably have 5 answers to read, hopefully. And by having only 5 answers to read, it cuts down a lot of the time that I need to read through everything. But that really depends on how accurate the model is, or the clustering tool. So I'm going to show you how it generally works. So if I click on login, right, basically at this page, the teacher can select their question sets, because you can have multiple question sets. But now for testing, there's only one. So it connects to a MongoDB database, takes the questions
You
out.
wonder why people think you are from CS or tech, right? That's why. This is the reason why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Let's continue
Yeah.
here.
So when the students scan the QR code, then it will actually populate the second code, but now I have to copy it in. So I'm just going to put user ID 11. I haven't gotten it to the stage where I really use it in class with student names and all, but now we will just have welcome student 11, and I can start the quiz, and I'm going to choose this question 1. And question 1 tells me why are alkanes unreactive. This is my go-to question, sort of like the hello world that I use. After I send the question, so multiple students can log in. Once I click send, it will send to everybody, and the student can type in like I don't know, for example, right? So they can send the answer, and I'll have this I don't know immediately populated. But of course, clustering, I can't cluster just one answer, so I'm going to add some demo data. Now you should realize why I put user ID 11 other than 1 to 6, because
Okay.
I don't want them to clash. Then I'm going to click on mark answers. Usually this is a time where I have to pray very hard and hope that it works. So now I think it worked. All right. So you'll see that it actually marked auto-graded my 2, 4, and 6. Students 2, 4, and 6 to say that they have both gotten, all 3 of them have answered the things correctly, assigned the marks here. And this is the one that I'm more interested in. When the students say no idea or I don't know, you can see that it belongs to the same cluster, cluster 1. Things like number 2 is skip, and then of course 0. I don't have enough examples, so this is what you can see. So imagine a class of 28 submits their answer. Now some of the similar answers will be updated. So let's say I don't like this answer. I don't like this feedback. I can just say, they say don't know, right? So I will just write student doesn't know, work harder, for example. And I click on update cluster, it will update every other box within that cluster. So it speeds up the time in which I'll take to grade this, because if I'm thinking about a future plan, we are actually going to integrate this into our learning management system so that we can track the students' mastery throughout their 2 years here.
Nice. So you don't intend to just use this for like in-class interaction kind. You can use this for like homework assignments that are done online. Then you can also grade them by clustering similar responses together. Can I just check these classes? Is it like what we were talking about last time, where you categorize them based on some model template, like for example, cluster 0 or cluster, maybe the top one. The top one is cluster 3, I guess, the one that both correct one.
So how I made this work was, when I want to go through answers in class, things that are obviously correct, I want to group them as one. Then the rest of the answers, I will group them into clusters, because
Also, there's no clustering for correct answers.
yes, correct. So what I've done is I will separate all the correct answers first, then all the incorrect ones, then I will group them, because it helps me to explain those better. Because the correct one, I just pick one example and I can talk about it. It's quite straightforward.
I see. So this one is doing some form of categorizing, right? Or like you give it a model answer and then you ask like LLMs to see whether it matches.
Yeah, so let me show you how it works. So of course this one I will hide it. Like it comes from the it will actually come from the MongoDB database. So I will give a model answer, marking points. In the prompt, I'll tell them that each marking point is worth 1 mark, and they have to mark very, very strictly. It has to contain these ideas. Then I actually did some in-context learning through short prompting by give it, this is answer, this is a score, this is answer, this is score, and so on. Yeah, so it's actually using these 3 examples to mark the answers. And what I've realized was, so in one of my experiments with another question, like question 2, right, there are multiple answers. So this explains why this is formed as the major product, whereas the other one is a minor product. This has multiple answers, which are all correct. And what I did was, initially the first answer, I only had one answer for it. So it marked, but the other correct answer was given a very low score. And what I realized was that, once I edited the model answers, when I changed one of the model answers here, it actually worked quite well. Because basically I remembered as a teacher, what are some typical other answers, alternative answers that I can accept? I will put them as part of the field short examples for it to reference.
Mm. That's quite nice because then you give it some grounding as to what is a good answer, what is a bad answer, and then it can sort of do some classification to the different categories for you. So I do think this is something that is very interesting and also useful. Can I just ask the clustering part?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
It's k-means clustering. So it's the same. I will embed all of them into
Oh,
the
it's vector
vector
embedding.
space. Yeah, then I will just run k-means. But because right now it's still in the experimental stage, I just put arbitrary value of n is equal to 3. And then it only gives me 3 clusters. There are other methods out there, but I'm not sure whether they are fast enough. Because there's the elbow method, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
will try different values until you find which is the best number of buckets. But another way that we are trying to do is we are trying to just ask the large language model to cluster it and tell me which of it is in which cluster and what's the rationale behind clustering them, and output it as a
that's a little hard for the LLM to do. Yeah.
yeah.
They
But
will
it was very
hallucinate a lot.
interesting
Yeah.
because it did work for some of these cases. Because it showed some promise. Basically, we made it output a JSON file and then it worked with the JSON output.
Yeah, I think what you could try is because you have the vector embeddings, right? Then you could just see cosine similarity from one vector embedding to another, and then like if it's a very very similar embedding, you could probably cluster them together. Like if the cosine similarity is greater than 0.9, you cluster together. So it's not exactly k-means because there's no k to begin with. It's just like keep looping through all the vector embeddings. If it's similar, you just add. So you can keep adding. If everything is very similar, everything will be all added in one chunk. Then eventually, after you do like a for loop through all the responses, you might already have your distinct clusters without even doing k-means.
I think that is very similar to the MMR method, right? The max marginal, I forgot what's the last word.
I
The
don't know. I
algorithm
just
that
came
people
up with the
use.
method on the spot, so I'm not too sure where this method is similar to. But the idea is that there's no predefined clusters beforehand. You just keep adding to the clusters if they are similar. And you use the vector embedding as your basis for deciding similarity.
I think that would be an interesting way to try it.
Of course, there's another way. The other way is basically you already know like what are the predefined clusters that you could have. And then you just basically ask GPT to pattern match to those. It's something like pattern match to your model answer. You also can pattern match to predefined clusters. Yeah. But then that also means that there's no diversity. You'll always get the same groups.
But I guess in a certain sense, this is what at the end of the day, what we want to show the students, right? That there are some common mistakes, there are correct answers, and there are irrelevant answers. Very, very irrelevant answers. If they are very irrelevant, I wouldn't even want to spend time to discuss about them. I would just say this concept is clearly wrong, go and fix it. If it is close, but there are some form of misconceptions, because we have the experience, the domain knowledge to know that these are typical mistakes. Being able to classify students into those, I think that is actually more powerful than grouping them randomly, because these questions are already predefined. I already know what kind of mistakes students might make from my own experience.
Yeah, so you prefer a more flexible clustering system. Then I also understand. Then you also can give comments to each cluster separately and save your marking time as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's actually quite interesting. I just want to go one step further. Have you thought of automating your response to the students?
What do you mean?
Okay, you scroll down a bit. Scroll down.
Yeah.
Right now your comments over here, right? Yeah. Also, you already automated the comments.
Yeah, these comments are all automated.
All right. So you have been thinking of what I'm thinking also. Basically, everything can be automated.
Yeah, it is automated, but I don't want to push the comments to them until I am ready to push them, because just now I had to edit some of it, right? Because I'm not sure. This is where I don't want the students to just get it from the LLM, because this is where my domain expertise comes in. But what I will ask my students to do is here. You did not score full credits, you belong to cluster 1. So as I'm talking about cluster 1, that is where their attention should be, because this is supposed to be done in class as a tool to go through this assignment. So I am still the facilitator in class, but this helps me to speed up the amount of time and also control their attention.
Very cool. So I do think there's potential for this. You will probably need to hard code the categories for full marks, the criteria and stuff, because you let LMs do it, it's probably going to be a mixed bag. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Yeah.
So can I just check, based on your experience of using this for chemistry, are there concepts that the LM doesn't understand?
There are a lot of concepts you don't understand, but they are quite good at matching similar answers.
So if you give it the predefined answers already, it can sort of match the similar words together, right?
Similar ideas. Because ultimately in chemistry, you can always distill things to a core few ideas, and those they understand quite well. So for example, they know the difference between exothermic and endothermic, and that's actually a very big idea already.
I understand. No, I'm just thinking about my times when I was doing PhD. I was a TA that I helped to mark stuff. So there's also a model answer given to me. But sometimes the student goes out of the model answer, but I understand what the student is writing, so I mark the student right. So this is because I have understanding of the topic, and the model answer is just like a very short excerpt. It doesn't tell everything fully, but
Yeah.
I do know that the other method works as well. So
Yes.
I think this GPT is not able to do it right now, right?
Yeah.
Because if you want it to be very freeform and flexible, you might get it wrong. Yeah. So I would say that the one of the limitations of this is that the questions must be simple enough, such that like just one step you can solve already, one or two steps. Yeah. If you take too many steps, right, and there's too many possibilities, I think this method is not going to work too well.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. In fact, when I conceptualized this idea, it was the teacher still has to be in the center of this, and the teacher is very important, because when I first created this Autograder, what it was supposed to do was to ensure that if the answer is absolutely clear, and it is very, very similar to the model answer, will it be marked correct? Otherwise, the wrong answers are the ones that you will return to me. Because as a teacher, if the student knows the answer very well, I don't want to spend a lot of time marking the correct answers. What I want is to focus on the students that don't do well and are getting the misconceptions, or, or those students with alternative answers that might make sense. So those were the things that I'm more interested in. So as a tool, it is supposed to help me in my teaching and not replace me as a teacher. And if I think along it that way, being able to design tools for the meaningful use of AI in education is something that I am constantly thinking about. Can I
Very
build
nice.
something that makes me more effective as a teacher rather than make me jobless?
Of course, of course. I think we can discuss more about the impacts of AI-based education versus traditional education after this. I just want to have one last question. Is basically like, do you create the whole interface yourself, the website?
Oh yeah, I did.
Wow, impressive. Yeah, usually people outsource this for the education sector to do it to a secondary provider, but you did this whole
Uh,
thing.
it was
Nice, nice.
quite fast. I just because I've done a bit of web app programming, so using this together with ChatGPT, it was quite fast.
Yeah, I start to question whether you teach tech now rather than yeah. Oh, actually, more or less you are done with this, right? So actually, I would like
Yes.
to share something that I did as well. So
Okay.
it's my turn to share. So let me just show you what I did. Back in the holidays, I was teaching people how to use ChatGPT to create games in Python using Pygame, and one part of the course involves me teaching Python. So I thought, why not to be true to my the costs and say that, hey, actually you can actually learn Python using ChatGPT. ChatGPT teaches Python pretty well. So I did this very simple prompt. You can just copy and paste this prompt. It's on my GitHub. So you can just copy and paste this thing, and basically what it says is I give it some stuff to teach, and then it just goes through all this stuff one by one, and then give some examples and give the description, and then ask the user to key in the input. So for example, level 1 is about number, strings, booleans, assignment to variables. So these are the stuff like numbers, strings, like how to assign it. And then try it out. The code will be something like that. So you have to key in stuff, like you can key in like something like my age equals to maybe 4. All right. And then we can see what happened. You key in this one, and then you fill in this one here. So let's try to clean something differently. Like my name, I don't use the quotes because you also use quotation marks, right?
Mm.
So over here, okay, it didn't do that well. So I would say that, hey, you key in wrongly. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So this is the, but you can see over here is updated.
Mm.
Then you can just say like, tell me the answer or something. So I tried to explicitly say that, do not give the answer. So you can see like you have to say it's either true or not. Yeah. So this allows for like some very flexible learning where you can do like interaction with the content, and then they will like based on what you output, you compare with like the model answer. In fact, the model answer for this I didn't even provide like your chemistry case because GPT is quite competent
Mm.
with Python code. So are you ready to continue? Yes. So this is like I tried this out with people, and I realized that actually, yeah, they do seem quite happy to use this. But one thing I realized about education like this, like without going through the personal touch, is that although you might be able to, okay, let's say that, like, I don't know, like it's like what were the so over here you can like sort of jailbreak already. I mean, you can do rule-based stuff and so on. But the main thing is I like to say that what I noticed when I let people try out this like self-learning program is that, the engagement level, yes, although the AI is like teaching them, but I feel that it loses a bit of the personal touch of education. Like I do feel that sometimes like iterating to and fro a person would be something that helps you remember better. Like if I were to
Mm.
just look at the text like that, maybe that's not a very good learning style. But at least it showed me that like GPT is able to do something like this, an automated learner.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm not going to show the rest of the levels, but this is an example of how like we can do an automatic curriculum teacher, and I'm sure
Mm.
it has applications in a lot of places like electronic tutors and so on. So I'm going to stop my share now.